welcome back to another U.S. immigration law video. Today we'll be discussing whether or not you have to leave the United States if you have an expired visa in your passport. Does simply having that expired visa mean you have to leave the United States? Does it put you in jeopardy as far as your status in the United States? Now, it's important to understand what a visa is, and we're going to discuss the difference between status and a visa for immigration purposes. And it's very important to understand because there's a lot of confusion around what a visa is and what your status is when you're in the United States as a foreign national. So if you have a visa in your passport and it looks a lot like a passport biographic page, it has your photograph on it. It comes from the U.S. government. It indicates how long the visa is valid, what it's valid for. This is placed in your passport and one of your passport pages. And individuals often think that that visa in the passport determines how long they can stay inside the United States. And that is not true. So what a visa does is that stamp in the passport allows you to seek entry into the United States for the purposes on that visa. And those visa stamps are issued at a U.S. consulate or an embassy, and then that can be subsequently used for entry into the United States. Now, the visa itself only allows you to seek entry to the United States. It doesn't guarantee entry into the United States. And you have to present that visa at a port of entry for ultimate entry, and the border officer will determine whether or not they're going to allow you to enter the United States. And although the visa has an expiration date, you're not necessarily admitted to the United States all the way up to that expiration date on that visa. You are admitted according to whatever CBP puts in the system, according to the status they give you after you use that visa to enter the United States. So a visa gets you into the United States, then you are issued a status that it determines how long you can stay in the United States. So it's very important to understand there's a difference. The visa is to seek entry. After entry, the status determines how long you're allowed to stay in the United States. And that status is indicated on what is called a Form I-94 record of admission. And a while ago, CBP went away from a physical I-94 in a passport to an electronic I-94. And when you enter the United States, that I-94 is issued. And it will tell you the status you were admitted in. Let's say you were admitted in TN status. It'll indicate the day you were admitted, and it'll also indicate the day by which you have to either extend, renew that visa or depart the United States, or the expiration date. So that is what determines how long you can stay in the United States. So if your I-94 is still valid, you can legally stay in the United States even if you have an expired visa in your passport. However, if your I-94 has expired, you could be out of status, and that could lead to serious problems, including removal proceedings or potential overstays and long-term consequences for immigration purposes if you overstay that I-94. So when do you need to leave the United States? Well, you could have to leave the United States if your I-94 is expired, like I just mentioned, and you failed to get an extension or change your status to another status. If you're planning on traveling outside of the United States and you have and your visa has expired, then you could be in a situation where you need to get a new visa to re-enter the United States. Keep in mind that a visa is an entry document. So even if you have a valid I-94, if you depart the country, depending on what your status or your situation is, and you don't have a valid visa to seek re-entry, and if you're Canadian, this may not apply to you at all because you're visa exempt, depending on your country of citizenship, you could need to obtain a new visa at a consulate or embassy before you come back to the United States because that visa is the travel document. Now, if you're changing your status and you're switching from, like, let's say an F1 to an H1B visa, you may need to leave the U.S. and re-enter with a new visa that allows you to travel under that new status. So it all depends on your situation. You may need to leave the United States and get a new visa if it is expired if you will be traveling outside of the United States. Now, if you're traveling inside the United States and you have a valid I-94, you're still in legal status. A visa is not required to travel domestically in the United States as long as you're in valid status. So understand the difference there. If you're traveling internationally and you have that expired visa, you might need to get a new visa to return to the United States. But if you're traveling inside the United States, you have a valid I-94, you're in legal status, then even if your visa is expired, you can continue to travel domestically in the United States. Now, keep in mind there is a new real ID requirement that you have to meet. So as long as you have a real ID and you stay in status, then you can travel inside the United States. So if you are leaving the United States, make sure before you leave, you schedule an appointment with the consulate, so it's not going to delay your return to the United States. If you need to get that visa in your passport, look up the processing times and delays for the country that you'll be processing through, and make sure you have valid documents for re-entry on that visa. So an I-797 approval notice or a new I-94 record that indicates that your status is approved, you're just getting a new visa that will allow you to travel and re-enter the United States. So it's very important to understand the difference. A visa is an entry document to the United States, while status governs how long you can remain in the United States after you enter on that visa. And just because you have an expired visa, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to depart the United States. So if you have any questions about the difference between a visa and status and what your status is in the United States and whether or not you need that visa, then we are able to assist you with those questions and with any other U.S. immigration matters.